Hello, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am so glad you've joined us on this journey through America's past where every town, every road, and every quiet field holds a story that helped shape a nation. Today, we step back into the cool, tense spring of 1775, a moment when 13 colonies stood on the edge of rebellion, and two small Massachusetts towns became the spark that lit a revolution. This is the story of the battles of Lexington and Concord. By April 1775, tensions between Great Britain and its American colonies had simmered for over a decade. Taxes without representation, the Boston Tea Party, the closing of Boston Harbor Reach Act by Parliament had been met with growing defiance from colonists, who believed their rights as Englishmen were being trampled. In response, local militias known as Minutemen, because they could be ready to fight at a minute's notice, had begun organizing across New England. They trained in secret, stockpiled weapons, and watched British movements with wary eyes. In Boston, British General Gage, also the royal governor of Massachusetts, knew trouble was brewing. Intelligence reached him that the rebels were gathering arms and ammunition in the nearby town of Concord, about 20 miles northwest of Boston. Determined to crush the rebellion before it could fully ignite, Gage ordered a secret nighttime mission: send 700 elite British soldiers to march to Concord, seize the colonial weapons, and arrest key rebel leaders. Samuel Adams and John Hancock believed to be hiding in nearby Lexington. But secrets are hard to keep in a tight-knit colony, thanks to an intricate network of patriot spies and writers, including Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Samuel Prescott. The countryside was soon alive with warnings. On the night of April 18th, church bells rang, lanterns glowed in windows, and horseback messengers galloped through the dark, shouting, "The regulars are coming out." By dawn on April 19th, the people of Lexington were ready. Lexington Green, a small patch of open land at the heart of town, was where Captain John Parker gathered about 77 local militiamen. They weren't soldiers in the traditional sense. Most were farmers, blacksmiths, and shopkeepers, but they stood firm, muskets in hand, facing the road from Boston. They didn't plan to attack. Their orders were simple: make a show of resistance, assert their right to assemble, but avoid bloodshed if possible. Around 5 a.m., the advance guard of British troops, led by Major John Pitcairn, arrived. Pitcairn, seeing armed men blocking the road, shouted for them to disperse. Captain Parker, knowing his men were outnumbered and outgunned, gave the order to do just that. But in the tense silence that followed, no one knows who fired a single shot. That shot, heard round the world, as poet Ralph Waldo Emerson would later call it, shattered the morning calm. The British soldiers, perhaps startled or acting on instinct, opened fire. Within minutes, 8 Minutemen lay dead on the green, and 10 more were wounded. The rest scattered into the woods and fields. The British paused only briefly to regroup before continuing their march to Concord. But news of the violence in Lexington traveled fast. By the time the Redcoats reached Concord, around 7 a.m., hundreds of militia members from surrounding towns, Bedford, Lincoln, had already gathered. The British searched the town and found only a few cannons and some gunpowder. Most of the weapons had been hidden or moved, thanks to the early warnings. Frustrated but undeterred, they set fire to a pile of wooden gun carriages and a liberty pole, sending smoke billowing into the sky. To the colonists watching from the hills, that smoke looked like the town itself was burning. Anger flared at the North Bridge, about half a mile from Concord Center. Roughly 400 Minutemen advanced toward a smaller British contingent guarding the crossing. The British, now outnumbered, fell back across the bridge and prepared to defend it. Then, in another chaotic moment that would echo through history, shots rang out once more. This time, it was the colonists who fired first, but only after believing the British had fired on them. In the brief skirmish that followed, 3 British soldiers were killed and 9 wounded. The rest retreated in confusion back toward Concord Center. For the British, the mission had unraveled. What began as a swift, surgical strike had turned into something far more dangerous. As they prepared to march back to Boston, now 18 miles away, they had no idea what awaited them. Because while they'd been in Concord, the alarm had spread like wildfire. From every village, farm, and crossroads, armed men poured onto the roads. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't march in formation. But they knew the land and they were furious. What followed was not a battle in the traditional sense, but a running ambush that stretched for hours. From Concord to Lincoln, through Minutemen, now Arlington, and into Charlestown. Colonial militia fired from behind stone walls, from inside barns, from the cover of trees. The British column, exhausted and disoriented, struggled to maintain order. Officers fell, soldiers broke ranks. Discipline crumbled under relentless, invisible attack. By the time the survivors reached Charlestown, they had suffered nearly 250 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing. The colonial forces, though less organized, lost about 90 men. But numbers weren't the point. The message was clear. The colonists would fight, and they could win. News of the battles raced across the colonies. Within days, thousands of volunteers streamed toward Boston, surrounding the city and laying siege to the British garrison. The Second Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia in May, appointing George Washington as commander-in-chief of a new Continental Army. The War for Independence, though not yet officially declared, had begun. Lexington and Concord were more than just military engagements. They were a declaration in action. The colonists had crossed a threshold, no longer petitioning or protesting. They had taken up arms to defend what they believed was theirs by right: liberty, self-governance, and dignity. Today, if you walk Lexington Green at sunrise, or stand on Concord's North Bridge beneath the towering obelisk erected in 1836, you can still feel the weight of those moments. The grass is quiet, the trees whisper in the wind. But if you listen closely, if you let your imagination wander back to that fateful April morning, you might hear the echo of hoofbeats, the rustle of wool coats in the dew, the sharp crack of musket fire that changed everything. These towns, small and unassuming, remind us that history isn't always made in grand capitals or by kings and generals. Sometimes it's made by ordinary people standing their ground on a village green, choosing principle over fear, and lighting a flame that would become a beacon for generations. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you or sparked your curiosity, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more journeys into the heart of American history. Every place has a past, and together we'll keep uncovering the stories that shaped the nation. Until next time, stay curious and take care.